A warm welcome back to the History Show here on Uxbridge FM, and we're very pleased again to welcome Ken Pearce to the show. And today we're chatting about how the RAF came to Uxbridge. Hi, Ken.
Hello. It's now 10 years since the closing ceremony took place at RAF Uxbridge. And since that day, many changes have taken place on the site, which has now been renamed St Andrew's Park. And I'm sure that redevelopment will continue for some time to come. In the past, though, the area was always known as the Hillingdon House estate. And in fact, the main house from those days, still called Hillingdon House, has recently been thoroughly renovated. We wait to see what it will be used for. The Hillingdon estate also included Hillingdon House Farm, a term still in use, and it includes the land which is now the home of Uxbridge Cricket Club, Hillingdon Sports and Leisure Centre, and an athletics stadium. Throughout most of the 19th century, the estate belonged to a family called Cox, C-O-X, who owned a bank in London with close associations to the army. Richard Henry Cox bought the estate in 1815, and his family were destined to own it for almost a century. The original Hillingdon House was destroyed by fire in 1844, so its replacement exists today. Richard Henry Cox died in 1865, but his family continued to occupy the property. And among other things, they helped to found Uxbridge Cottage Hospital and Hillingdon Golf Club. By the beginning of the 20th century, though, the family fortunes were beginning to decline. The days of the small private bank like Cox's were over. So two significant events took place in 1913. First, Cox's bank was amalgamated with Lloyd's Bank. And secondly, the Hillingdon House estate was put on the market. War broke out the following year, as you know, and the property had not been sold. But in 1915, the government stepped in and took over the estate. And a rumour spread in our area that it was to become a prisoner of war camp. This news did not go down well with local people. They thought the Germans would be living in this fine country house in extensive grounds, while their fathers, husbands and brothers were fighting in the trenches. That's an outrage. Well, it didn't happen. And I think it may well have been just a rumour. But instead, Hillingdon House was taken over as a convalescent home for Canadian troops. They were warmly welcomed by local people who sent gifts and arranged entertainments for the men. Indeed, a building was actually found just off the high street, which they could use as a leisure centre. But during the war, aviation made great strides. Advances took place in the design of aircraft, and as time passed, a war in the air developed. The Royal Flying Corps, as it was then known, were involved in bombing enemy territory, and aerial combat became an everyday feature at the front. So by 1917, there was a great demand for bomb aimers and machine gunners. And an armament and gunnery school was established by the Flying Corps at Perivale. But it was much too small, and so the decision was taken to move to larger premises at Uxbridge. Over the winter of 1917-18, things happened very quickly. The Canadian troops were moved to another site, and the builders moved in. At this period, the Minister for Munitions was no other than Winston Churchill, whose energetic leadership was clearly evident. Very few permanent buildings went up to begin with. They were mostly wooden and concrete huts. and by early spring, the service personnel began to arrive. The permanent buildings did include the messes, that's dining halls, and a building for meetings, concerts, and film shows. Tents, known as hangars, were to become classrooms for the trainees. So the school was soon up and running at the beginning of 1918. The noise of the Lewis machine guns echoed daily over the town, and teachers at the secondary school in the Greenway, quite close to the firing ranges, found it difficult sometimes to make themselves heard. At this time, the Royal Flying Corps had no women's branch, so about 150 members of the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps were drafted into the Uxbridge camp. And on May the 1st, George V visited the station and spent several hours touring the site to see what was going on. On April the 1st, by the way, the Royal Flying Corps had been renamed the Royal Air Force. Later that year, of course, in 1918, the war ended and it became apparent that the RAF's occupation was not a wartime one only. They had come to stay.
Yes, they had. And if you've not been to the Bunker Museum, you have to go, don't you, Ken? It's a wonderful museum.
Yes.
If you go to Headington First Card, it's free. And I believe the rifle range is still there in the grounds.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Which is quite strange. Nice tea shop as well with good cake.
And the borough's intention, as I understand it, is to convert that hall, that former cinema building, into a borough museum, which is something that we don't have. We're one of the few boroughs that don't have a local museum.
That'll be nice. It's quite a big building, isn't it, actually?
Yes, and I think it needs quite a lot of attention too. However,
okay,
I hope it happens in my lifetime.
Yeah. Right, thanks, Ken. Stay tuned for more historical stories coming up.